I used to believe in the system. I believed that if you worked hard, loved your family, and played by the rules, the world would protect you. That good people would be safe. I was wrong. It all ended on a rainy Thursday night in New York. The city was drowning in a storm, streets flooded with dirty water as I rushed out of the subway. I was late again, late for dinner, late for tucking my little girl into bed. My wife, Anna, had called me twice already. "Ethan, she's waiting for you," Anna had said the last time. She won't sleep without her bedtime story. I promised I'd be home in 15 minutes. I never made it. When my phone rang again, it wasn't Anna's voice. It was a police officer. "Mr. Cole, there's been an accident. You need to come down to East River Highway right now." My heart collapsed in my chest. When I arrived, all I could see were flashing red and blue lights, officers pushing me back as I screamed their names. Their car was crushed like a soda can. Its roof caved in, glass shattered everywhere. I pushed through the crowd. Rain poured down so hard it felt like needles. And then I saw them. Anna was slumped over the wheel, her hair matted with blood. My daughter, Emily, 6 years old, was in the back seat, her small body still. I'll never forget the sound that came out of me. It wasn't human. The rain mixed with the blood on the asphalt. Someone put a hand on my shoulder, murmuring something about drunk driver and instant death. But I couldn't hear. All I could see was Emily's pink stuffed rabbit lying in the road, soaked and dirty. I picked it up and held it against my chest like I could bring her back. But she was gone. They were both gone. The police called it a tragedy. A drunk driver had crossed the lane and hit them head on. He was arrested that night, a mid-level executive from Kane Global, the city's most powerful corporation. But within 48 hours, he was out on bail. And then the case was closed. No trial, no charges. It was like Anna and Emily had never existed. I knew something wasn't right. So I started digging. Nights turned into mornings as I sat in the dark with only my laptop and a bottle of whiskey. I hacked into databases, company servers, police reports, using the skills I'd learned as a cybersecurity engineer. And the deeper I went, the clearer it became. This wasn't an accident. Richard Kane, the billionaire CEO of Kane Global, had ordered the whole thing. Anna had been auditing the company's finances. She'd uncovered evidence of massive fraud and was about to blow the whistle. Kane couldn't let that happen. So he silenced her. Silenced them. I went to the police with what I'd found. They shut the door in my face. "Mr. Cole, you're making serious accusations. There's no proof." That's when she showed up at my door. Detective Oliver Blake. She had sharp eyes and a voice that didn't waste words. She stepped into my apartment like she owned it, looked at the wall covered in printouts and string, the evidence I'd gathered, and frowned. "Ethan Cole," she said, flashing her badge. "I'm investigating a string of suspicious deaths tied to Kane Global. But what you're doing, it's reckless. You're going to get yourself killed." "I don't care," I said flatly. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You think you're the first person who's lost someone to Kane? You go rogue, and you'll end up in a body bag like the rest. Let me handle this." "You?" I laughed bitterly. "You're bound by the same laws that protect him. Anna and Emily, they didn't get justice. You think I trust the system now?" Oliver clenched her jaw, clearly frustrated. "If you cross the line, Cole, there's no going back. Remember that." But I had already crossed it the night I buried my family. New York is a city that never sleeps. But for me, it had become a city of ghosts. Every street corner, every subway tunnel, I saw their faces. Anna's smile, Emily's laugh. I carried Emily's stuffed rabbit everywhere, tucked in my jacket pocket, a reminder of what was taken from me. The grief was unbearable, and beneath it, the rage burned hotter with every passing day. Kane thought he was untouchable, but he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Because I wasn't after justice anymore. I was after vengeance, and I was going to make him wish he'd never met me. I don't remember the weeks after the funeral. People came and went, murmuring condolences that sounded like background noise. My apartment was filled with flowers that wilted faster than I could throw them out. Friends dropped off casseroles I never touched. My boss called, said I could take as much time off as I needed. I told him I wasn't coming back. What was the point? Every corner of the apartment reminded me of them. Emily's drawings still taped to the fridge, her tiny shoes lined up by the door. Anna's favorite scarf hung on the back of a chair, faintly carrying her perfume. I couldn't move anything. Touching their things felt like erasing them. I stopped answering calls. I didn't eat. Some nights, I'd fall asleep on the couch, clutching Emily's stuffed rabbit, waking up hours later drenched in sweat, convinced I'd heard her voice calling me. The world moved on, but I was frozen in place. The city outside didn't care. New York never does. It was loud, alive, full of lights and people with somewhere to be. The same streets where Anna and I had walked hand in hand now felt hostile, suffocating. One night, I wandered into the subway just to escape my apartment. I rode the train for hours, back and forth, watching strangers' faces blur into one another. Everyone had somewhere to go, someone waiting for them. No one was waiting for me. It was around midnight when I stepped off at an empty station and saw a poster plastered on the tiled wall. A Kane Global ad, sleek, polished, showing Richard Kane's smiling face above the words, "Building a Better Future." I tore it down with shaking hands. Better future? My family was in the ground because of him. I knew then I couldn't stay frozen any longer. At first, I told myself I just wanted answers. That was a lie. I wanted blood. I started small. Late nights on my laptop, the glow of the screen, my only companion. Years of working in cybersecurity gave me an advantage. I knew how to slip past firewalls, erase my digital footprints. I hacked into Kane Global's employee database. The man who'd been behind the wheel that night, Mark Reynolds, was still on the payroll, promoted even. He was living in a luxury apartment uptown, a company car parked in his garage. I wanted to go there, to make him feel what I felt. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I spent weeks gathering information, financial records, internal emails, anything I could find. The deeper I went, the more rot I uncovered. Kane Global had its hands in everything, real estate, tech, even politics. They donated to police unions, funded election campaigns, owned half the city's officials. And Richard Kane was at the center of it all. I wasn't the only one digging. Detective Oliver Blake showed up again, this time at a dingy diner where I'd been nursing a cup of coffee for hours. She slid into the booth across from me without asking. "You look like hell," she said, studying me. "Thanks," I muttered. She dropped a manila folder on the table. Photos spilled out. Victims of accidents, all tied to Kane Global in some way. "You're not alone, Cole. These people died for the same reason Anna did. But if you keep charging ahead like this, you're going to end up like them." I clenched my jaw. So what? I just wait for the system to suddenly work? We both know it won't. Oliver's eyes hardened. I know you want him dead. Hell, part of me does too. But if you go rogue, you won't just lose. You'll give Kane exactly what he wants, another body to bury. I stared at her. For a moment, I almost believed she cared. But then I thought about Emily's laugh, the way she used to wrap her arms around my neck and whisper good night. No, I said quietly. I won't give him the satisfaction. I'm going to make him pay. Ethan, I stood, pushing past her. Stay out of my way, detective. She didn't follow. Back in my apartment, I sat on the floor surrounded by maps, photos, strings connecting faces to places. Kane Global was a fortress, and I was one man. I couldn't take him head on. I'd have to be patient. I'd have to be smarter than I'd ever been in my life. That's when the first piece fell into place. I found an internal memo. Reynolds was overseeing a hush-hush development deal in Queens, a project riddled with bribes and stolen land. He'd be at the site every Thursday night, reviewing security. I stared at the date. Tomorrow was Thursday. I spent the next 24 hours preparing. Gloves, mask, a stolen burner phone. I even bought a cheap set of lockpicks online and practiced until my hands were raw. As I packed a duffel bag, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the man staring back. The grief had carved me into something sharper, harder. I reached into my jacket and pulled out Emily's stuffed rabbit, the fur matted and dirty from the night of the crash. I pressed it to my lips and whispered, "I'm doing this for you." My hands stopped shaking. Tomorrow night, I'd make my move, and Mark Reynolds would be the first to fall. I didn't sleep the night before. I sat in the dark, the glow of my laptop casting ghostly shadows on the walls. My apartment was a war zone of empty coffee cups, wrinkled maps of New York, and strings connecting names to photographs. But in my mind, there was only one image. Mark Reynolds. He was the first link in the chain. If I wanted to get to Richard Kane, I had to start with him. Thursday night came too quickly. The Queens construction site was exactly as the satellite images had shown. Sprawling, fenced off, and crawling with security. Chain-link barriers wrapped the perimeter like a steel snake, cameras perched at every corner. Kane Global didn't just build buildings. They built fortresses. I parked my car a block away, pulled my hood over my head, and circled the site until I found the gap I'd discovered online. It was barely wide enough for me to squeeze through, and the metal fence groaned as I pushed my way in. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of wet cement and rust. Half-finished buildings loomed like skeletons in the dark. I checked my watch. Midnight. Somewhere above me, a spotlight swept across the yard. Security guards moved in pairs, flashlights cutting through the shadows. I waited, heart hammering, until they passed. Then I moved closer to the site office. Headlights appeared at the gate. A black SUV rolled in, tires crunching over the gravel. Mark Reynolds stepped out. He was wearing a tailored suit and laughing into his phone as if he owned the world. He waved to a guard at the gate, who simply nodded and let him through without even glancing in the trunk. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. This was the man who had killed my family and walked away without a scratch. I forced myself to wait. I needed him alone. Reynolds disappeared into the site office. I followed, moving quietly between stacks of lumber and steel beams until I reached the door. Inside, the office was a cramped space filled with blueprints and filing cabinets. Reynolds poured himself a drink from the minibar, humming as he checked his messages. He didn't hear me step in behind him. "Hello, Mark," I said softly. He jumped so violently, he almost spilled his drink. Who the hell? Don't move. I pulled the taser from my jacket, the crackle of electricity filling the air. His eyes went wide. Listen, man, I don't know what you think. You killed them, I snapped. My wife, my daughter. You crushed their car like it was nothing. What? No, I don't know what you're talking about. I lunged forward and pressed the taser against his chest. He collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. You're going to tell me everything you know about Richard Kane, I said, my voice low, dangerous. Or you'll wish the police had gotten to you first. He broke faster than I expected. Okay. Reynolds raised his hands, his voice trembling. It wasn't supposed to go that far. Kane, he just wanted to scare her. I swear. Scare her? My voice cracked. She's dead. My 6-year-old daughter is dead. He flinched. I didn't want that. I was following orders. I grabbed his collar and slammed him against the wall. Whose orders? Kane's, he choked out. Richard Kane. He said Anna was about to leak information that could destroy the company. He told me to take care of it. My stomach turned. Richard Kane hadn't just ordered the hit. He had made it sound like business as usual. Tell me how to get to him, I demanded. Reynolds shook his head violently. I can't. Kane's got eyes everywhere. If I even breathe his name outside of work, I'm dead. You're already dead if you don't talk, I snarled. The door burst open. Freeze, hands where I can see them. It was Detective Oliver Blake. Her gun was leveled at me, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. Cole, drop the taser, now. Blake, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, she said. You're about to commit a felony in front of a cop. Don't do this. Reynolds scrambled toward her. Arrest him. He's insane. He tried to kill me. I stepped back, the taser trembling in my hand. He's working for Kane. He knows everything. Oliver's eyes flickered. Then let me handle it. If you keep going down this road, Cole, you're going to end up in a grave. I hesitated. I could see the conflict in her face. She wanted to help, but she was bound by the same system that had already failed me. No, I said finally. I can't let this end here. Ethan, don't! I bolted through the back door, dragging Reynolds with me. The construction site exploded into chaos. Security guards shouted. Flashlights and guns trained on us as we stumbled through the yard. A spotlight flared, blinding me. Stop or we'll shoot. I yanked Reynolds behind a stack of steel beams as bullets ripped through the air. Please, he begged, his voice cracking. Don't let them kill me. Then talk, I hissed. Who else knows what Kane is planning? He hesitated, then whispered a name. One I hadn't heard before. It sent a chill down my spine. We didn't make it far. As we reached the fence, I heard the sharp crack of a rifle. Reynolds' body jerked violently. He collapsed at my feet, blood pooling beneath him. No. I dropped to my knees, clutching his shoulders. Stay with me. His lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear over the pounding in my ears. Then his eyes went glassy. I looked up, scanning the rooftops, but the sniper was already gone. I grabbed Reynolds' phone and wallet and fled. By the time I reached my apartment, my hands were still slick with blood. I slammed the door shut and collapsed against it, gasping for air. My eyes fell on the stuffed rabbit sitting on the table. Emily's rabbit. I reached for it with shaking hands. This wasn't just about vengeance anymore. This was a war, and I was losing. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Oliver Blake standing there, her face pale. "Ethan," she said quietly, "Reynolds is dead. And you're now the prime suspect." My stomach dropped. "Kane's playing you," I said, my voice hoarse. "He killed Reynolds because he was a loose end." "I can't protect you if you keep running," Oliver said. "Come in with me. We'll figure this out the right way." I stared at her, then shook my head. "The right way doesn't work," I said. "You know that as well as I do." "Ethan," I slammed the door. For the first time since Anna and Emily died, I felt truly alone, and I knew I had to disappear before Kane or the police found me. I spent the next 3 days hiding like a hunted animal. New York had never felt so small. Every street corner seemed to have my photo taped to a lamppost. Every time a subway door opened, I saw people glance at me like they knew. Even in the coldest corners of the city, I felt the net tightening around me. The news was relentless. Prime suspect in the murder of Mark Reynolds remains at large. The NYPD warns he is armed and dangerous. The headline looped on every TV screen in every bodega and bar. They ran my photo next to Reynolds's, twisting the story to make me look like the monster. And Detective Oliver Blake was the face of the manhunt. I caught one of her press conferences on a muted TV at a diner where I'd stopped for water. Oliver looked tired, her jaw tight, but her voice was firm as she spoke. "Ethan Cole is wanted for questioning in connection with the death of Mark Reynolds. He is considered dangerous. If you see him, do not approach. Call the police immediately." I sat in the back corner, pulling my hood lower. My food sat untouched on the table. She wasn't lying when she called me dangerous. But I wasn't dangerous to strangers. I was dangerous to Richard Kane. I couldn't stay in one place for long. I slept under bridges, in abandoned subway tunnels, anywhere the cameras wouldn't see me. My phone was useless. I'd smashed it after Reynolds' death, knowing Kane's people could track it. I was completely alone, and it was breaking me. Some nights, I'd sit in the shadows and hold Emily's stuffed rabbit, running my thumb over the worn-out stitching. I talked to her like she was still here. "I'm sorry, baby girl," I whispered one night, tears streaking my face. "I let you down. I let your mom down. I don't even know if I'm fighting the right way anymore." The city roared outside like it didn't care. By the 4th day, I was close to collapse. I'd found an abandoned warehouse by the docks and stayed there, too exhausted to keep moving. My body ached from sleeping on concrete, my head pounding from lack of food and sleep. I closed my eyes and thought about Anna, about Emily's laugh. Then I remembered something. Reynolds' phone. I still had it, buried in my backpack. I grabbed it with trembling hands and powered it on. The screen was cracked, the battery almost dead. But it lit up. I started scrolling. Most of the messages were work-related. Corporate updates, password resets, the usual garbage. But then I found a folder labeled Asset Control. And inside that folder was the thing I'd stopped hoping for. Photos. I almost dropped the phone. It was Emily, alive. The first photo showed her sitting on a narrow bed in a windowless room. Her hair was longer than I remembered, tangled around her small face. But her eyes, they were still the same. She was clutching her stuffed rabbit, the same one I carried everywhere. There were more photos, videos. Emily crying, calling out for me. A man's voice in the background telling her to be quiet or be a good girl. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, clutching the phone to my chest. Emily wasn't dead. Kane had her. I replayed the videos again and again, searching for details. The room had cinder block walls and a single steel door. There were no windows, but in one video, I caught a glimpse of a guard walking past the open doorway. On his jacket, I saw the edge of a logo. Kane Global Logistics, Pier 47. I'd seen that name before. It was one of Kane's shipping hubs on the waterfront, a fortress with cameras, biometric locks, and private security armed like soldiers. I wanted to run there immediately, but I couldn't. If I charged in now, I'd be dead before I saw her. I had to think. I spent the next few hours combing through every file on Reynolds' phone. I found internal memos about asset transfers, encrypted emails, schedules for shipments. It was like staring into a world I barely understood. A machine of corruption so big, it could crush anyone who stepped in its way. Kane Global wasn't just powerful. They owned everything. I found proof of bribes to city officials, donations to police unions, even contracts with federal agencies. Kane's reach stretched from the city council to Washington. The system had never stood a chance against him. And now I knew why Anna had to die. She'd discovered the truth. I was so deep in the files that I didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. Ethan. I spun around, taser in hand. Oliver Blake stood in the doorway of the warehouse, her gun holstered, but her eyes sharp. "You shouldn't be here," I said, voice hoarse. She stepped forward slowly. "Neither should you. There's a task force scouring the city. You're their #1 priority. If I can find you, Kane's people can too." "Then leave," I snapped. "I'm not here to arrest you," she said quietly. "But you're making it very hard for me to keep saying that." I hesitated. "Why are you here?" She reached into her coat and pulled out a small flash drive. "Because I believe you," she said. "This has surveillance data from Pier 47. I got it before Kane's people could wipe the servers. It might help you find Emily." My chest tightened. "You know?" She nodded. "I've seen the files. She's alive, isn't she?" I couldn't answer. "Ethan," she said softly, "if you go in there blind, you'll get her killed. Let me help you." I wanted to say yes, but I saw the weight on her face, the way she carried herself like a cop first, a human second. "You're part of the system," I said. "The same system that let Kane get away with killing Anna. How can I trust you?" She flinched like I'd hit her. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone to him. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but my brother died because of Kane Global. I couldn't prove it. I'm not going to let him take Emily too." I stared at the flash drive in her hand. Then I took it. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," she replied. "Just don't make me regret this." Oliver left without another word, melting back into the shadows. I plugged the drive into my laptop and waited as the files loaded. Pier 47 was a fortress. Cameras on every corner, armed guards patrolling every 5 minutes, biometric locks on every door. But now I had something Kane didn't know I had. I zoomed in on one frame of footage. Emily. She was being led down a hallway by a guard, her small hands clutching her rabbit like a lifeline. Her eyes met the camera for just a second. And in that second, I knew. I couldn't fail her again. The next morning, I sat on the warehouse floor with maps and blueprints spread out around me. If Kane thought I was broken, he was wrong. I was done running. I was done hiding. I was going to bring Emily home. And Richard Kane was going to pay for everything. I didn't have the luxury of time. Pier 47 was a fortress. Kane Global's shipping hub was one of the most secure locations in the city, with private security that made the NYPD look like mall cops. Armed guards rotated every 5 minutes. Cameras covered every inch of the compound. Biometric locks on every door. If I rushed in now, Emily would die. I needed information, and to get it, I'd have to do something reckless, and the first step was to disappear even deeper. I abandoned the warehouse and moved constantly, sleeping in subway cars, stairwells, anywhere I could blend into the city's shadows. I shaved my beard with a stolen razor, cut my hair with dull scissors. I learned which streets had the fewest cameras, which alleys could get me across Manhattan unseen. I was a ghost. But even ghosts needed allies. Oliver called once, late at night. I almost didn't answer. "I can't keep covering for you," she said, voice tight. "There's a task force breathing down my neck. They think you'll kill again." I closed my eyes. "I don't have a choice, Oliver. If Kane realizes I know about Emily, he'll move her. Or worse." There was a pause. "What's your plan?" "Pier 47, I said. She sucked in a breath. "Ethan, that's suicide. I'm not walking in blind, but I need access to Kane's network first. Headquarters in Manhattan. If I can plant a back door, I can track his movements. I'll know when Emily's there and when she's not." Oliver swore softly. "I can't be seen helping you, but I can give you something." A few hours later, I found an envelope taped under a bench in Central Park. Inside was a badge clone, a stolen employee ID for Kane Global HQ, and a note in Oliver's careful handwriting. "This will get you past the first gate. After that, you're on your own." The next night, I stood across the street from Kane Global's skyscraper, the glass facade gleaming like a monument to greed. The city bustled around me, oblivious. I checked the badge clone in my pocket and took a deep breath. I was about to walk into the lion's den. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and glass. Security guards in tailored suits watched everyone who passed through. I kept my head down and swiped the badge. The gate clicked open. One hurdle down, I headed for the elevators, rehearsing my story in my head. If anyone asked, I was a low-level IT contractor here to update server hardware. But no one stopped me. The higher I went, the emptier the building became. At the 30th floor, I stepped into a hallway lined with glass-walled offices. The servers were deeper inside, past another locked door. I pulled out a small device I'd built from scavenged parts, a homemade lock bypass. It hummed softly as I pressed it against the keypad. 30 seconds later, the door clicked open. The server room was a freezing vault of blinking lights. I moved quickly, plugging in a flash drive loaded with malware. The program began to burrow into Kane's private network, opening a back door I could access later. My hands shook as I watched the progress bar crawl forward. Then I heard footsteps. I froze. A guard's shadow stretched across the floor as he rounded the corner. I yanked the drive free and ducked behind a server rack just as the door opened. The guard stepped inside, humming softly as he checked the equipment. I held my breath, every muscle screaming. Finally, after what felt like hours, he left. I slipped out behind him, forcing myself not to run. Back on the street, my legs nearly gave out. I'd done it. I had a way in. But the danger was only just beginning. Back in the hideout, I plugged the drive into my laptop. Kane's network unfolded before me like a map of a city I was about to burn down. I could see shipping schedules, employee rosters, even encrypted communications. And there, Pier 47. I studied every detail. Guard rotations, delivery times, access points. I built a model of the compound from blueprints stolen from city records, layering it with real-time camera feeds. I saw Emily twice in the surveillance archives. Each time she was escorted by 2 guards, her rabbit clutched in her arms. Every time I saw her face, I felt something inside me harden. I was going to bring her home, and I was going to make Kane suffer. Oliver called again. "Ethan," she said, "I don't know what you're planning, but you need to know something. Kane's tightened security at Pier 47. He's expecting you." "Good," I said. "Good. Are you insane?" "He wants me desperate. I'll use that against him." She hesitated. "If you cross the line, I can't save you. The task force already has a warrant to shoot on sight." I almost laughed. "They won't get the chance." "Ethan." I hung up. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I built signal jammers to blind Kane's cameras. I rewired a drone to deliver distractions where I needed them. I packed EMP grenades, tasers, and smoke canisters. Anything that could buy me a few extra seconds. And I trained. Push-ups, sprints, anything to make sure my body wouldn't betray me when it mattered. Each night, I replayed Emily's videos, memorizing every detail of her prison. I whispered promises into the darkness. "I'm coming for you, baby girl. Hold on." On the 4th night, I tested the back door into Kane's network. It worked. I could see Kane's private calendar, his travel plans, even the list of assets stored at Pier 47. Emily's name was there. Asset, E-Cole, Priority Level Alpha. My blood ran cold. To Kane, she wasn't a child. She was leverage. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. If I failed, Emily wouldn't just disappear. Kane would break her the way he broke me. I closed the laptop and slipped the rabbit into my jacket. The man who left the hideout that night wasn't the same man who had crawled in days earlier. I was no longer a grieving father. I was a weapon. And Kane Global was going to learn that even the most untouchable empire could bleed. The night was colder than I expected. Pier 47 loomed ahead, a sprawl of steel warehouses and cranes silhouetted against the glimmering skyline. Floodlights cast harsh white beams across the compound, cutting through the darkness like prison searchlights. Beyond the chain-link fence, I could hear the distant growl of diesel engines, the clang of metal shipping containers being stacked. I crouched behind a rusted stack of containers on the waterfront, peering through the gaps. Kane Global's security was exactly as I'd predicted. Tight, efficient, military grade. Guards in black tactical gear patrolled in pairs, rifles slung over their chests, earpieces glowing faintly as they murmured coded instructions. My pulse thudded hard in my ears. This was it. If I failed now, I'd lose Emily forever. I slipped the signal jammer from my backpack, a boxy device cobbled together from stolen components, and switched it on. A soft hum filled the air as it scrambled the compound's cameras. I had 15 minutes before the system recalibrated. I ducked low and sprinted across the empty dock, heart hammering with each step. The chain-link fence was topped with barbed wire, but I found the blind spot I'd memorized from the blueprints. I clipped the fence with bolt cutters and slid through, landing softly on the other side. No turning back now. Inside the perimeter, every shadow felt alive. I crouched behind stacked pallets, watching a pair of guards walk past, their boots thudding against the asphalt in perfect rhythm. I waited for them to vanish, then moved toward the maintenance tunnel I'd marked as my entry point. The air inside was stale and damp, reeking of oil and rust. Water dripped from overhead pipes, the sound echoing like footsteps. I climbed the narrow ladder at the tunnel's end, my fingers slick with sweat. At the top was a locked grate. I pulled out my homemade bypass device, praying it would work. 30 seconds. 40. A faint click. I eased the grate open and slipped into the warehouse. It was bigger than I'd imagined. Rows of shipping containers stretched into the distance, illuminated by the harsh glow of overhead fluorescents. Forklifts rumbled between aisles, their drivers oblivious to the man moving silently above them. I stayed on the elevated catwalk, creeping toward the secured wing at the far end of the building. That was where Emily was. I could feel it. At the security door, I crouched and pressed the bypass device to the keypad. Nothing. A red light blinked. Error. "Come on," I whispered. I tried again. Another error. Footsteps echoed behind me. Guards. I ducked into the shadows, holding my breath as two men walked past, their flashlights cutting through the dark. I couldn't afford to waste time. I reached into my backpack and pulled out an EMP charge. A muffled thud shook the floor as I set it off. The keypad sparked, then went dead. I forced the door open and slipped inside. The secured wing was eerily silent. A long corridor stretched ahead, lined with reinforced steel doors. I checked each one, my chest tightening with every empty room. Then I saw it. Emily's stuffed rabbit lay on the floor just outside a door at the far end of the hall. I knelt, picking it up with trembling hands. I pushed the door open. She was there. Emily. She sat curled up on a narrow bed, knees tucked to her chest, eyes wide with fear. Her hair was tangled and dirty, her face pale in the dim light. "Daddy," she whispered. My heart shattered. I rushed to her side and pulled her into my arms, tears streaming down my face. "Baby girl," I choked out. "I'm here. I'm going to take you home." She clung to me, sobbing softly. I wanted to stay there forever. But then I saw it. A small red dot hovering on her forehead. Sniper. "Don't move, Cole." The voice was smooth, confident. I turned slowly. Richard Kane stood in the doorway, flanked by two armed guards. He looked immaculate in a tailored suit, as if this was just another board meeting. "You really are predictable," Kane said, smiling coldly. "I knew you'd come for her. That's why I left the rabbit. A trail for the desperate father." I tightened my hold on Emily. "If you touch her..." "Relax," Kane said, raising a hand. "I don't hurt assets, not unless I have to." I stood slowly, shielding Emily with my body. "What do you want?" I demanded. Kane stepped closer, his eyes glinting with amusement. "I want you to understand something, Cole. You think you're fighting for justice, but you're just a pawn in a game you can't win. People like me, we adapt, we endure, and we always win." I clenched my jaw. "Not tonight," I said. Kane smirked. "Oh, I think tonight proves my point. You came here alone, walking straight into my hands, because you couldn't resist. You're weak. You've always been weak." He gestured at Emily. "That's why I kept her alive. She's the chain around your neck." The guards moved forward. I acted first. I hurled a smoke grenade at the floor and grabbed Emily, diving behind the bed as the room filled with thick gray haze. Gunfire erupted, bullets splintering the walls. I shoved Emily toward the back door I'd spotted earlier. "Run!" I shouted. "Don't stop!" She hesitated, terrified. "Go!" She bolted. I followed, taser in hand, tackling the first guard who burst through the smoke. I jammed the taser into his chest and felt him convulse violently before collapsing. The second guard swung his rifle at my head. A gunshot cracked. He crumpled. I looked up. Oliver Blake stood in the doorway, gun smoking, eyes blazing. "I told you this was suicide," she snapped, hauling me to my feet. "You picked a hell of a time to show up," I gasped, grabbing Emily's hand. "Follow me," she said. "Kane's bringing in reinforcements. We have to move." We sprinted down the corridor, Emily clutching my arm like a lifeline. The loading bay was chaos. Guards poured in from every direction, rifles raised. Oliver fired first, dropping one. I shoved Emily behind a stack of crates, tossing another smoke grenade to buy us seconds. "This way," Oliver shouted, leading us toward a side exit. But Kane was waiting. He stepped out of the shadows, pistol aimed squarely at Emily. "Not another step," he said calmly. I froze. Emily whimpered, clutching my leg. Kane's smile was almost gentle. "See, Cole? You can't win. You've spent so long trying to be the hero, but the truth is, you're just like me. You'll do anything to survive. Even kill her." He tossed something at my feet. A pistol. "Pick it up," Kane said. "Kill Blake, or I kill your daughter." I stared at him, heart hammering. Oliver shook her head. "Ethan, don't." Kane's finger tightened on the trigger. 10 seconds, Cole. Choose." I picked up the pistol. My hands shook. Emily's eyes were wide, pleading. "Daddy." I turned the gun on Kane. He laughed. "You're not fast enough." I fired. The bullet slammed into his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Oliver moved instantly, tackling him and kicking the gun from his hand. "Go!" she shouted. I grabbed Emily and ran. The compound erupted into chaos. Guards shouted, alarms blared, bullets cracked through the air as Oliver covered our escape. We burst through the side exit and sprinted toward the perimeter fence. "Up!" I hoisted Emily over the fence, ignoring the pain tearing through my ribs. She dropped safely on the other side. I was halfway up when a guard grabbed my leg. I kicked hard, sending him sprawling, and vaulted over the top. We hit the ground running. A black SUV waited in the shadows of the dock. Oliver jumped behind the wheel and slammed the gas as we dove inside. Emily clung to me in the back seat, sobbing into my chest. I stroked her hair, whispering, "It's okay. You're safe now." But I wasn't sure if I believed it. Through the rear window, I could see flames licking the night sky. The last of my explosives had detonated, tearing through Pier 47 in a chain reaction. Kane's empire was burning. But I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The drive away from Pier 47 felt like an eternity. Emily was asleep in my arms, her small hands tangled in my jacket like she feared I might disappear if she let go. Her cheeks were streaked with dried tears, her breathing uneven. Every bump in the road made her flinch, and every sound outside made me glance over my shoulder. Oliver drove in silence. Her face was set, but I could see the tremor in her jaw, the way her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. The city lights blurred past the window like ghosts. None of us spoke until we reached Queens. "Where now?" Oliver asked, pulling the car into the narrow alley behind a shuttered grocery store. I stared at the dim streetlights, the trash bins, the cracked asphalt. "Somewhere Kane can't find us." Oliver shut off the engine. "There's nowhere Kane can't reach, Ethan. Not yet." I didn't answer, because she was right. The safe house was a cramped apartment above the grocery store. Emily curled up on the worn couch, hugging her rabbit as if it could shield her from the world. I knelt beside her, brushing the hair from her face. "You're safe now," I whispered. but the words tasted bitter. Because I knew Kane wasn't finished. Oliver stepped into the kitchen, her voice low. I have to go back to the precinct. They're already suspicious I disappeared during the raid. If they connect me to you, they'll destroy you, I finished. She nodded. I can hold them off for now, but you can't stay here long. Every cop in the city is hunting you, Ethan, and Kane's people will be faster. I glanced at Emily. She was finally asleep, but her small body trembled even in dreams. She's all I have left, I said. I can't lose her. Oliver looked at me, her expression softening. Then finish this. Kane will rebuild if you give him the chance. The next 2 days were a blur. I couldn't risk leaving the apartment, so I lived in the glow of my laptop, hacking into Kane Global's network through the back door I'd planted. My fingers ached, my eyes burned. But I didn't stop. I dumped everything. Thousands of documents, internal emails, records of bribes, offshore accounts, and, worst of all, evidence of murder for hire. I released it all to journalists, prosecutors, anyone who could touch Kane from the outside. By the third morning, it was everywhere. Kane Global empire implodes in historic scandal. CEO Richard Kane under investigation for fraud, racketeering, and multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder. I sat on the floor of the safe house, Emily asleep in my lap, watching Kane's pale, tight-lipped face on the small TV. He was being led into a courthouse, cameras flashing like a storm. But I knew better. This wasn't over. Oliver visited that night, bringing food and medicine. She looked more exhausted than I'd ever seen her. You've done real damage, she said, sitting at the table. Kane's board is turning on him. Half his allies have cut ties. He's bleeding out. But he's not in prison, I said flatly. Not yet, but it's only a matter of time. I shook my head. Men like him always find a way back. He'll be coming for us. Oliver didn't argue, because she knew I was right. I was proven right 2 nights later. The van pulled up outside the safe house just after midnight. I was sitting by the window, scanning the empty street, when I saw the glint of a rifle barrel. Emily, I shouted, scooping her into my arms. Bullets shattered the windows as I dove to the floor. Oliver kicked open the door a second later, gun drawn, firing back at the shadows outside. Go, she screamed. We fled through the back exit into the alley, stumbling over trash bins as the gunman closed in. Emily clung to me, sobbing into my chest. This way. Oliver led us through a maze of back streets. We reached her car, but the tires were shredded. Kane had anticipated everything. I turned to Oliver. Get her out of the city, anywhere. Just keep her safe. What about you? I'm ending this, I said. She grabbed my arm. Ethan, you'll get yourself killed. I looked at Emily, her tear-streaked face, her rabbit clutched tight. I can't let him win, I said. Oliver understood. I called Kane from a burner phone. He answered immediately. Cole, he said, his voice cold and calm. I was wondering when you'd call. Meet me, I said. Alone. 1 hour. He chuckled. You think you're in a position to dictate terms? You want this to end? Then meet me. Otherwise, I release the rest. The files I haven't touched yet. The ones that will destroy what's left of you. Silence. Then, fine. 1 hour. Bring my asset. He hung up. I met Kane on the rooftop of an abandoned office building downtown. The city stretched out below like a graveyard of lights. He was waiting, flanked by 2 guards. Where is she? Kane demanded. She's safe, I said. Somewhere you'll never find her. Kane's lip curled. You think you've won, Cole, but you're still a fugitive. The system will crush you long after I'm gone. Maybe, I said, but you won't touch her again. I tossed a flash drive at his feet. Everything I had on you is out there, I said. But this is the last piece. It's proof you ordered Anna's death. If anything happens to Emily, it goes straight to the press. Kane froze. You're bluffing, he said. Try me. I stepped closer. You killed my wife because she found out what you were doing. She was going to expose you, and you couldn't let that happen. Kane's eyes narrowed. She wasn't innocent, Cole, he said softly. She worked for us once. She thought she could make a difference, but we used her like everyone else. When she realized it was already too late. The words hit me like a bullet. No, I whispered. She carried our secrets for years, Kane continued, and you never knew. She was ready to turn on us, yes, but she was one of us before that. The blood is on her hands, too. I felt my chest tighten. Anna. I remembered the way she used to come home late, the way she'd change the subject when I asked about her work. I wanted to scream at Kane, to call him a liar, but deep down, I couldn't be sure. Kane stepped closer, lowering his voice. You can't protect Emily forever, Cole. One day she'll slip through your fingers, and when she does, I cut him off. If you come near her again, I'll finish what I started at Pier 47, and I won't miss next time. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. He turned and walked away, his guards falling in behind him. I watched until they disappeared into the night. Then I left. 2 nights later, Kane was arrested again. This time, the charges would stick. His empire had collapsed completely. The man who once seemed untouchable was now a hollow shell, humiliated on live television. But I knew prison wouldn't hold him forever, which was why Emily and I had to vanish. Oliver was the only one who knew where we were going. She met us at the bus station before dawn, a small envelope in her hand. New identities, she said softly. Cash, too. It's not much, but it'll get you started. I took the envelope, struggling to find the words. Thank you, I said. She looked at Emily, then back at me. Take care of her, Ethan, and don't come back. I nodded. Oliver stepped back as the bus doors closed. I watched her disappear through the window as the city faded behind us. Emily was asleep again, her head on my shoulder. I stared out the window, gripping her small hand in mine. We had no home, no future, but we had each other. And for now, that was enough. And in that quiet moment, I knew there was something I needed to say, to anyone willing to listen. If you're listening to this, remember, the system won't always save you. Sometimes, the only justice you'll ever see is the one you carve out yourself. But it comes at a cost. I don't know what tomorrow will bring for Emily and me. We'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. But at least she's free. And as long as she's breathing, I can live with that. Because she's all that matters.